Hey guys, it's EJ with Blockpad, and in this video, we're taking a look at automatically generated table of contents. Now, there's a surprising amount to cover in this video, so let's just jump into it. In my example file here, I have a number of headings. They're all set to heading 1. If you're not familiar with headings in Blockpad, I'll put some links in the description where you can learn more about that. But some quick background is this would be a regular paragraph, and I can change that to a heading by coming up here and changing this to heading or changing it back to paragraph. So I have all of these heading ones. To create a table of contents of those headings, I will go up to the toolbar and click Write, and then click Table of Contents. Now you've got a few options. For this one, I'm just going to change it to Report 1 and frame title set to no and click OK. Now, after I've done that, I've got this table of contents here of all of my headings. You can see it shows the page numbers. And over here, if I hover over them, I can control click, and that's going to take me to that spot in the file. Going back up to the table of contents. Now, this is a live automatically generated table of contents. So if I change anything in the file, it's going to update with that. So for example, I can put in inputs here and change this to heading 1. And then I can change here dimensions and BC properties to headings 2. And while that won't update automatically, if I come up here to formulas update all, I'll see those changes reflected in my table of contents. And also notice because I made these heading 2, these are now indented. The table of contents is going to, by default, indent all of the different heading levels one step more for each heading level. So you can see I have heading 1, 2, heading 4, and that's going to be reflected in my table of contents. Going back to my original, if I double click this table of contents, I'll see a few options. So the table of contents in Blockpad is a block. A block is a dynamic part of your file inside of the formula system that can take inputs, show content, and display outputs. So here you see my inputs to the block. So first, I have this headings function running on report 1. We'll talk more about that later. I also have some options. I can either show links as text or not, in which case they'll be displayed as hyperlinks using the hyperlink formatting. I can also choose to show the page numbers or not, and you have a few different options for page number leaders. So this other ... or for example, you cannot show the leader at all. There's also this option tab after label that's going to put a tab in front of all of those items in the table of contents. I'm not really going to cover that in too much detail in this video. So I'll click Update Block, and now you'll see that I no longer have those leaders. Let's talk a little more about formatting these table of contents. So by default, any style rules that you have in the file are going to be applied to the items inside of this table of contents. So if I go to Style, Manage Styles, I have this non-outline paragraph. And if I change the spacing after to be even bigger, that's not only going to affect the paragraphs in my document, it's also going to affect these lines inside of my table of contents. So I'll press Ctrl Z to undo that. But what if you don't want any spacing in your table of contents? Well, you can't change this because it'll affect your whole document. But what you can do is select this block, go to Style, Manage Styles, and at this point, when you create a new rule, you'll have the option for container to be block content. And so this is only going to affect the contents of your table of content block. I'm going to bring this over here so that I can see everything while I'm working on it. So in this new rule, I'll change objects of type to any paragraph, and that's going to affect all of these items inside of the table of contents. I'll change spacing after to be 2 and spacing before to be 0. And so now all of that spacing is the same. Now let's say I just want to change the heading 1 table of contents items. To do that, I'll make a new rule, make sure it's block content, and set objects of type to non-outline paragraph. And so this is only going to affect the heading 1s. I'll set here border to be bottom, apply in preview, and click OK. You see that's not affecting these heading 2. To set formatting for those, I'll create a new rule and change objects of type to outline 1. Outline 1 will apply to the heading 2 labels, outline 2 to the heading 3 labels, and so on. So for this, I'll go to highlight 1, change font size to 8, and press enter. And so then that's going to make that change for me there. Now, let's say you want to just change one item in the table of contents. So for example, over here, I just want to highlight this specific heading 1. You can't really do that while the table of contents is a block. What you can do though is go to blocks and explode block, and that's going to change this from a block into a section. Now that it's a section, however, it's not going to automatically update. So for example, if I call this heading 3 and make it a heading 3, and then press F5, since this is no longer a block, it's just a section, it's not going to automatically update. But as a benefit, you can select specific things and format them as you need to. So if you do really need to highlight just something specific in a table of contents, you have that as an option. Although generally, I think it's a better idea just to keep it as a table of contents block. Another thing I wanted to point out about these table of contents is in our headings video, we talked about doing numbered headings using this numbered list. When you do numbered headings, those are going to show up as numbered in your table of contents, so that might be good to know. Moving on, let's talk about table of contents in large files with a lot of reports. So for my sample file here, I have the file that I used for the array video series. So that's a pretty big file. It's got a lot of different reports with a lot of different headings. Let's say I want a table of contents for that. So I'll do the same thing. I'll go up to Write and Table of Contents. And then now these options here, I can choose between Whole File and Array Overview. If I just choose Array Overview and set frame titles to No, then all I'm going to see are the headings inside of just this report. So basically the same thing we were looking at before. I'll delete that. Let's go up to Write, Table of Contents. This time, I'll have the whole file and include frame titles and click OK. So when I do that, that's now going to have all of the headings for the entire file and the frame names included in the table of contents. So I have info, index, concat, my frame name here, and all of the headings inside of it. And these will still work as hyperlinks. I can press Control click and it's going to bring me to that part of the file. Going back here, let's say you don't want to show those frame names. So I'll delete that. Go to Write, Table of Contents. I'll keep that as whole file still. And then I'll go over here and change Include Frame Titles to No. Then I'll click OK. Now you see I don't have those frame titles anymore. However, I am still starting over at page number 1 for each of those new frames. That's because in Blockpad, by default, when you start a new report, the page number is going to start over again. However, with version 1.8, we added an option so that you can continue page numbering across frames. To do that, you're going to come up here and click Write, Page Numbers. And check this box here, try to continue from previous frame. Now right now I'm only changing the property for array overview, but I can click this box here too to apply to all the frames in the whole file. So I'll click OK. You can see up here my page count increased, and when I go through the table of contents, the pages go through continuously. If I go to any other part of the file, you'll see even though I'm at the top of this lookup frame, my page starts at 16 because the previous frame ended at 15. So those are the options for displaying multiple frames in a document. Now, one question you might have after that is, what if I want to display 2 or 3 of these frames and not all of them? Well, to answer that, let's take a step back and go back to that headings function that we talked about. So here in this example file, I have first report, second report, third report. These all have just some real simple headings. I'll go up to Write and Table of Contents, click OK, and now you'll see my table of contents. And if I double click it, remember for this headings input, I have the headings of the document here. Now looking closer at this input, you can see there's an equal sign right there at the beginning. This indicates that this is actually a Blockpad formula, and it's going to work just like any Blockpad formula in an equation or in a cell or anything like that. So let's take a look at what this is doing. I'm going to highlight it, press Control C to copy, and down here I'll press the equal sign to open an equation, paste that in, and press Enter. So what you see now is an array of key value objects. So each item in this array is a key value object. I'll put a link in the description that's a little more about these. That has a node, content, label, level, and type. To show you guys a little bit more about that, I'll name this, press Enter. Now I'll press the equal sign again and click this to reference it. If I use parentheses indexing, I can look at the first item in this array. So it's just this one up here at the top. Now, if I press a period to access what's inside of that key value object, I have a few options. So for now, I'll press content, and you can see the content of that first item in the array is the first report. I can change this to 2 to look at the content of the second item in the array. Some more options I have, I can look at the level. So for heading 1, the level is 0. And I can also look at the type, which is going to show whether that's a heading or a frame. So because this is what the input to the table of contents actually looks like, and we know that this is in a formula, we can use Blockpad functions to modify this input to show what we want. So just as a quick example of that, I'll double click inside of here, and I'll use the filter function on the headings. So for my condition, I'm going to use an inline function, h maps to. Let's say h.level equals 0. So now I'm only going to show the items in this array where the level equals 0, so only the heading ones. And if I press update block, then you'll see that that's what's reflected in my table of contents. Press Control Z to undo that. So as you might imagine, this lends a lot of flexibility into what we choose to show and hide inside of the table of contents. Basically, anything you can do with Blockpad arrays, you can use to modify the inputs to the table of contents. So another example, let's say I want to hide all of the headings that have an X at the end. So here I have Notes X, and this one at the bottom, and another heading X. So I'll double click this. I'll use filter again, filter of headings of the document, H maps to, and now we're looking at H.content. And we want to look at the rightmost character. So I'm going to use the write function, H.content, comma 1, to look just at one character from the right. And we want to show the ones that are not equal to X. And that's my function. I'll press Enter, and you can see the ones that end in X have now disappeared. I'll press Control Z. Another option is we can just start the formula from scratch, and let's just combine the headings in the first and third report. So I'll use concat items, which combines arrays to just have continuous items. For the first array, I'm going to use the headings function on the first report. And then I'll use the headings function on the third report. And that, press enter. Now you'll see I'm only showing the headings in the first and in the third report. I can click update block, and that's what it's going to be. Now this can get as complex as you want it to. So if I come over here, I have this example where I've wrote a custom function, and it's going to exclude frames that end in underscore, including all of the headings inside of that frame. So if I double click here, you can see I'm using that custom function because again, this is just an ordinary Blockpad formula that works like any other Blockpad formula. So I can use custom functions or anything else. And then I'm running that on the headings of the document. I can click update. And now report 4 here with the underscores hidden. I can also change this name to end in an underscore. And if I update my formula, then that's going to be hidden now too. So obviously there's a ton of different things you can do with these formulas. I'm not going to cover all of them in this video, but I am going to put a link in the description to an example file that's going to cover a number of different formulas you can use to modify these headings. And I'm going to keep adding to this file as I get different requests for different heading situations. So if you have anything you'd like to see in that example file, please leave a comment and I'll go ahead and add that and you'll be able to look at it and see it there. So that's all I've got for you guys today. That pretty much covers table of contents in Blockpad. If you have any questions or suggestions, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you.